Yeah, that's the very first thing that they do when we wake up. So whenever we put a collar on a bear, we make sure that it goes to sleep so that we're protected. And we always wait to make sure the bear is completely up, is able to work on its own, be able to work to kind of walk, protect itself before we leave the animal. And the first thing it does every single time is try to take off that collar. It's funny. We have an exact routine. It'll kind of move its head, it'll stand up, and then it'll be like, "Oh, what is this? This heavy thing on my head?" And I'll try to move it. And again, these aren't wildly heavy. These bears are probably 4, 5, 600 pounds, and so a few pound collar isn't anything that's going to affect the bear. But we see that that's one of the first things that they do is kind of explore this new thing on their neck. And normally within the first week, uh, maybe 20% of the bears will find a way to get it over their neck, and we'll have to go out and get the camera or the GPS collar back. One of my favorite things about camera traps is, especially sometimes when you really know the animals, you know the location, you can put the cameras in areas that you know the animals will be kind of interacting with. So one of my favorite personal cameras is we have a lone tree on top of a mountain that we know the animals love rubbing. So bears actually communicate chemically, we think, when they mark on trees. So they'll get up to a tree and they'll kind of scratch their back, and they're actually putting chemicals onto the tree that kind of, we think they're talking to other bears that way. Um, and so this is a tree that we know that they use to communicate. And I put a camera facing down. And one of my favorite photos is a bear scratching and it sees the camera and it just looks up and kind of puts its head to the side. And that's probably one of my favorite photos I have. Oh man, I mean, field work's why you get into biology, ecology, um, large carnivore ecology, I guess. I absolutely love field work. So I go for about 2 months each year, and there's really three phases of the field work for me. It's very, very difficult. It's very hard because we work about so 3,000 meters, so 6, 7,000 feet in elevation. So it's really, really hard work climbing up and down mountains, but it's one of my favorite parts. So we do our most of our bear trapping very early in the season, and during that time, I'm on call 24 hours a day. So in the mornings, I get up, I'm working, setting new traps, checking out cameras, and then most of the time, our bears kind of seem to get into the trap about sometime between 11 and 3 o'clock in the morning. And so a lot of times overnight, I'm working, finding the bears, putting the collars on them during the day, doing the rest of the field work. And so it's a difficult time, but it's one of the most magical times, just being out there alone sometimes in these amazing areas, being able to interact with these animals and kind of seeing what they're doing to survive and how they're overcoming these obstacles. It's really a magical time and a very nice place to be. That's a great question. I've always been someone that just loves asking questions. And at some point, I think very early on, maybe even my college, I knew that I always wanted to work with animals. I always wanted to be out there doing something physically, probably with my hands, but doing something to advance science, advance our knowledge. I always loved that. And sometime, probably mid to late college, I realized instead of asking questions, I love understanding how to answer questions. So part of what I do is go out and I trap these animals. I, do all that. But the fun part for me is understanding how to answer the question. So how do we know that bears are migrating? How do you actually say that an animal's migrating? Well, there's actually math behind that. You can fit an animal's distance away from where you capture it. You can make lines that fit that, and you can answer the question. Math is such an exciting thing that's really driven me to want to explore is uh, not only asking the questions but learning how to answer them. And I think that's the most exciting. A lot of times we just get told answers in our classes, and but this is a time that I get to go out and I get to answer questions. And so I started out loving the animals, and then I realized I loved answering the questions and knowing things maybe one little grain of knowledge that was just mine for a little moment before I got to share it with the world has always just kind of been a very exciting idea for me.